Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayu Putumati Dewi, and I'm a PhD candidate from Amsterdam, BMJ, the Netherlands. And today I'm excited to present our randomized controlled trial study looking at whether open science checklists can help improve reproducibility of findings. This study is part of OSIRIS project, Open Science to Improve Reproducibility in Science. And this project is funded by the European Union's Horizon Europe. And this study was carried out by wonderful collaborators from the Netherlands, the France, the UK, and USA. We still don't really know how much journal peer review practices actually improve reproducibility. Open science practices things like sharing data code, registering study, is being more and more promoted, but we don't really know whether checking these practices makes a difference. At the BMJ, sharing data in code is already required, but no one had formally tested whether the manuscript they received were reproducible. Our study objective was simple: to assess whether adding an open science checklist to journal peer review process can help improve reproducibility of findings. Our study was registered in OSF, and we follow SPIRIT guidelines. We run two parallel randomized control trial design, equal allocation, randomization, block size 4, 6, and 8. And we carried out this study at the BMJ and BMJ Open. And regarding sample size, we hypothesized that adding checklists would boost reproducibility of primary outcomes from 50% in control arms to 70% in intervention arm with 90% power and 5% alpha. And based on this calculation, we come up with this minimum sample of 260 manuscripts. Regarding peer review process in the intervention arm, our research team members fill out 13 items of checklists. It includes things like protocol, checking whether there's a data code, and so on. I will share you in the next slide. And once it was complete, we uploaded this to the journal manuscript tracking system and shared it with authors and editors as part of the standard peer review. And meanwhile, manuscript in the control arm follow the usual peer review process without checklist, nothing extra. And here's the open science checklist covers. It includes protocol, study registration, open material, open data, open code, citing material, citing data, citing code. And we also check whether the code is available and accessible in open repository. And we also check whether the author reports software and versioning, whether they use completed and relevant reporting guidelines, and whether it's open access, which is always true for the BMJ and BMJ Open, and whether authors report the preprints. And of course, we use the standardized feedback letter. So for instance, in a manuscript, we found protocol, then we say, okay. But if it's not, then we say something like, please provide information regarding protocol or link to the protocol. And this open science checklist encourages structure and constructive reviewer feedback and complements editorial decision making. Our primary outcome is reproducibility. Is basically judged based on whether using the same data or code and analysis method yield the same primary findings. Our secondary outcome was checking whether the data code and data encode is available. And regarding outcome assessment, we focus on reproducibility of primary findings, and we conducted this at first revision stage. And it's important to note that the outcome assessors are blended from the allocation. And here's the results so far. We conducted a randomization period between March and April, and we successfully included manuscript of 402. And some of manuscript were rejected outright, while others were invited to revise. And per 21st of July 2025, 78 manuscripts had managed to go to our first revision. And we have fully assessed 28 manuscripts so far, and of those, we found one manuscript that is reproducible, and it came from intervention arm. And here's the details. So initially we randomized 103, but one was excluded because it's not eligible. In intervention arm, we have assessed 18 manuscripts, and 8 had data and code openly available, and 1 was reproducible. While in the control arm, we have fully assessed 10 manuscripts, and 2 had data or code openly available, but none are reproducible. And as you can see, some of the manuscripts are still ongoing of assessment. And to come to conclusion, our ongoing trial shows that adding checklists is doable and acceptable within editorial workflows. However, this need more robust practices and support mechanism for authors, editors, and peer reviewers. Many thanks.
We're going to move to questions. Please start.
Hi, Matt Eldrick from Northwestern. Could you go back one slide? I was, oh, maybe that was on here. I was wondering about so I do see there's more data and code openly available in the intervention arm. Is the proportion of data code openly available higher in the intervention arm?
Yeah, it could be. This is data or code available. Okay. Some manuscript only show data but not code, and some manuscript only show code but not data. But this also reflect that anything that is accessible doesn't mean it's reusable.
Right.
And some are just when I consult and check, and it's because the data is incomplete and the documentation was really poor, and some are also the format is impossible in the way to be reproduced.
And just one other question, if I could. You mentioned in the design of the checklist that it was to encourage constructive feedback, structured and constructive reviewer feedback. I was wondering about, I know that's not something you're assessing in this study. Has that been assessed in other work, or is that just a principle of the design of the checklist?
Yes, it's a principle of the design of the checklist, because we don't want to be like this intervention is just merely because of the feedback letters.
Yeah, okay.
But it's more about the context of the checklist.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Hi, Lauren Cadwell de Plus. I was just wondering what kind of behavior you see from the authors when they get the checklist. Are they trying to improve the open science practices? Like, do you do a second round of checking after they've perhaps added links to data or code?
Yeah, if I understand correctly, whether the open science really related to reproducibility, you mean?
Like, do the authors try and, like, when they receive the checklist, do they then do you see them trying to improve their open science outputs? And then do you check once again afterwards, like a second round of checking?
For the second one, we haven't planned for that yet, because initially, in the initial design, we think about to conduct the outcome assessment at the final publication. But due to feasibility, and we also think about the confounders like because at BMJ and BMJ Open, the code and data sharing are required at final publication. So we want to know that the effect of the interventions really come from this open science checklist. That's why we assess in the first revision stage. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I was wondering, you've chosen the primary outcome as reproducibility. It's quite philosophical now, what do you see as the future of reproducibility, especially with clinical trials where there is a lot of company interests in data and not making this data open available, which would break down the reproducibility process? So how do you think can we go forward in terms of data and code sharing and openness with clinical trials?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So for this outcome assessment, we only assess a manuscript that openly sharing code and data and is accessible. And many of the RCT, of course, doesn't open that. And because the authors are also blinded from this study, we will not contact the authors anyway. So if the authors say that the data and code is available upon request, then it is not reproducible because the context of open science is open. Yeah.
Thank you.
Online comments?
Good morning. Thank you. Laura Coquelin from the Karolinska Institute asks about several aspects of reproducibility. Was it for the entire paper or just for a specific part? Let's do it one by one.
Yes, thank you for the question. So I repeat again. So for the outcome assessment, we focus only the reproducibility of primary findings because we consider of the feasibility and also the workforce that we have in-house to reanalyze all those manuscripts. So yes, the answer is we only check the primary findings, not the entire content of the manuscripts.
Very good. I think that answers part two. How did you handle papers that reported many different results since you only have a binary outcome? So it's really only the reproducible or not applies only to the primary outcome. And it's also possible that a paper is only partially reproducible. And how do you take that into account?
Yes, thank you for your question. So if the results is not the same, then we judge this as not reproducible.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Perhaps I would have one. So you're going to exclude the reject paper from your analysis. Do you fear, and I think in your result there was some imbalance between the number of rejected articles between the two arms.
Yeah.
So do you fear that might induce some bias or some problems?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. So for the reject papers, of course, it will not be included in the outcome assessment because they are not invited to revise. And however, we acknowledge that will be our limitation. And because this is a pragmatic trials, so we will treat this study analyzed with the ITT analysis, intention to treat analysis.
So how are you going to consider that they are not reproducible? Are you going to impute
Yeah, the input and missing, yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
using
thank
the
you.
ITT analysis, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.